The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, somewhere between Olivia Carrington's second cup of chamomile tea and the final stages of her quarterly marketing report. She nearly ignored the call when she saw Drew's name flash on her screen. Her husband never called during work hours, but curiosity nudged her thumb toward the green button. "Hey, babe," she said, distracted. There was a pause. Then Drew's voice, low and strangely calm, slipped through the line. "I demolished your house." She blinked, lips parting slightly as she processed the absurdity. "What house?" "The Carrington estate," he replied. "The one outside Millersfield." Olivia laughed. "You mean the one that was torn down over a decade ago?" "Nice try." "I'm serious, Liv." There was a sharpness in his tone she couldn't quite place. She waited for the punchline, but it never came. "You're not funny," she muttered, her amusement fading. "That property was condemned and sold, remember? We saw the paperwork." "I thought the same," Drew said slowly. "But it was still there. I didn't know until I was already involved. And then, things moved fast." Olivia pushed back from her desk, her stomach knotting. "What do you mean still there? You went out there?" "I had to. A guy from the county said there were tax discrepancies, and your name popped up. I thought it might be fraud." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to worry you," Drew said. "But then I found the house. Liv, it wasn't just a foundation or ruins, it was standing. Furniture, curtains, like someone had been living there. I didn't know what else to do. I called a crew and had it torn down." His words hit like cold water. "You demolished it without asking me. That place belonged to my family." "And it's cursed you ever since," he snapped. "You said yourself, you never wanted to set foot on that land again." She stood, nearly knocking over her chair. Her pulse roared in her ears. "Drew, that place was supposed to be gone. The whole estate was flattened after the fire." "Then explain why it was there, why someone was squatting in it." "Why?" He stopped as if catching himself. "Liv, just go there. You'll understand." An hour later, Olivia found herself gripping the steering wheel of her car, speeding down the familiar winding road that led to Millersfield. The landscape hadn't changed much. Same endless stretches of trees, same rusted road signs leaning like old drunks on forgotten corners. But as she pulled into the gravel lot where the Carrington estate once stood, nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. Smoke still curled into the sky. The scent of charred wood clung to the humid summer air. Yellow police tape flapped in the breeze, cordoning off the wreckage like a crime scene. Emergency vehicles lined the roadside. Officers moved in and out of the ruins with tense urgency. And there, standing beside a soot-streaked SUV, was Drew, his face pale, shirt stained, arms crossed tightly over his chest. "What happened?" she whispered, stepping out of the car. He looked at her, stricken. "They found something in the wreckage?" Her breath caught. "What? A basement?" He swallowed. "One no one seemed to know existed, and inside it, bones." Olivia's world tilted. The house that was supposed to be gone had returned like a ghost, and it had brought a secret back from the dead. The ruins smoldered like a wound that refused to heal. Olivia stood at the edge of the property, barely breathing. The skeletal remains of the Carrington estate sprawled before her, a warped lattice of charred beams and collapsed walls, the air thick with the acrid tang of burned wood and scorched metal. The house had once stood proud and cold on this hilltop, a mausoleum of her childhood. Now it was nothing but cinders and rubble. Police vehicles blocked the gravel drive. Uniformed officers moved purposefully through the wreckage, and yellow tape fluttered like a warning. "Do not enter. Do not look too closely. Do not remember." Drew approached cautiously, his face drawn, eyes darkened with fatigue and something else. Something like dread. "They're calling in forensic specialists," he said quietly, as if afraid to be heard. "They've already marked off part of the foundation." Olivia tore her eyes from the ruins. "Because of the bones?" He nodded. "2 sets, found buried beneath the floor in a sealed space, hidden behind a false wall in what looked like a storage basement." Olivia blinked. "There was no basement. Drew hesitated. Apparently there was. A weight settled on her chest, thick and suffocating. But the house was rebuilt. No records show it, Drew said. That's the thing. There are no permits, no blueprints. The foundation was supposed to be cleared. But it's like someone just started building again, in secret. The outer structure was new, the basement, original. Her knees nearly buckled, and she stepped back, her heels sinking into soft earth. She turned away from the scene and toward the vast stretch of woods behind the property, shielding her eyes from the sun. Who lived here, she asked, more to herself than to him. They don't know yet, Drew said, but neighbors mentioned seeing lights at night over the last year. No one thought much of it. This place has always given people the creeps. Olivia stared at the skeletal remains of what had once been her family's legacy. Why didn't anyone say anything sooner? Drew didn't answer. Behind them, a detective approached. A tall woman in a dark blazer, clipboard in hand, mouth set in a grim line. She introduced herself as Detective Halliday and asked Olivia to step aside for questioning. Standard procedure, she said. You're listed on the original property documents. But I haven't owned this house for years, Olivia replied. It was supposed to be sold. Demolished. There shouldn't have been anything left standing. Detective Halliday arched a brow. Funny thing, there's no county record of demolition, no transfer of ownership, no tax history since 2009, until payments started up again in cash about 3 years ago. Paid in full. All traced back to an anonymous P.O. box. Drew looked stunned. What? Olivia felt her skin crawl. Someone was keeping it alive. The detective's gaze sharpened. Were you aware of anyone else who may have had access to the property? Olivia hesitated. Faces from her past flickered in her mind. Neighbors, distant relatives, the strange caretaker her father once hired to tend the land after the fire. But she shook her head. No, she whispered. No one. The detective studied her for a long beat, then handed over a copy of a preliminary report. We'll need you to stay nearby. For now, you're part of the investigation. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the scorched ruins, Olivia watched as a small white van pulled in medical examiners. The bones would be taken for analysis, cataloged and identified. But even before they were, Olivia felt it in her bones. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. That night, sleep came in fragments. Olivia tossed beneath the thin motel bedsheets, the ceiling fan clicking rhythmically above her as her mind replayed the day's horrors. Drew's voice on the phone, the scorched beams of the Carrington estate, the bones, silent, damning, waiting. But it was the basement that haunted her most. Because it shouldn't have existed. And yet, a part of her remembered it. The dream returned like it always did. Like it had for years. She was 12 again, barefoot in the hallway of the Carrington estate, clutching her sister Rachel's hand. The old house moaned with the wind, its walls swollen with secrets. Their father's voice thundered in the distance. Rachel pulled her toward the back pantry, the one with the warped floorboards, and yanked it open. I'll hide here, Rachel whispered. No, Olivia said, not the basement. We're not allowed. But Rachel was already gone, swallowed by shadows and stairs that led beneath the house. Then the door slammed, locked, screams echoed below, and Olivia ran. She jolted upright in bed, soaked in sweat. Rachel. The name clanged through her like a bell. It had been over 20 years since her sister vanished, disappeared the same night as a mysterious fire that gutted part of the house. Olivia had been told Rachel ran away, that she must have climbed out a window and gotten lost in the forest. But her parents had been cold and final about it. No funeral, no search, no questions. It was as if Rachel had never existed. Olivia threw off the covers and grabbed her phone, opening the browser with trembling fingers. She searched for the fire records from 2003. They were still there. Thin, vague. Electrical fault suspected, partial structure loss, no reported injuries. No mention of the basement, no mention of Rachel. She opened the demolition footage from the local news station, recorded only yesterday. The camera panned over the crumbling walls as they collapsed inward, and then she froze the frame. In the corner of the shot, just before the second-story beams caved in, stood a figure, distant, distorted by heat waves, but unmistakably human, watching from the edge of the trees. Unmoving. She zoomed in. Tall. Male. A brimmed hat. No visible face. A sick chill ran through her. There'd been someone there, watching it all happen. And the strange part? The figure didn't appear alarmed or panicked. He looked satisfied. Later that morning, she returned to the ruins, her boots crunching on blackened gravel. A uniformed officer waved her through after checking her name against a list. Detective Halliday was waiting near a temporary tent set up by the forensics team. "We found more," she said grimly. "Personal effects, children's shoes, a girl's bracelet, the initials RC etched into the metal. Rachel Carrington." Olivia's mouth went dry. "I need to know who found them," Olivia said, her voice low. A demolition crew member flagged the hollow space before the structure fell, said he felt the floor wasn't solid. "He's been doing this 20 years, said it didn't feel right." "Did he see anything else?" Halliday hesitated. "He said he thought someone had been living in the house recently. There were fresh food wrappers, water bottles, blankets." Olivia's stomach twisted. The house hadn't just stood in silence all these years. It had housed someone. Maybe multiple people. And maybe they'd never truly left. As she stared at the hollowed shell of her childhood home, Olivia realized something that made her breath catch. If Rachel hadn't run away, if she hadn't died that night, then where had she been all this time? And worse, who had kept her there? By the end of the week, Olivia found herself sitting in the musty records room of the Millersfield County Clerk's office, a manila folder open in front of her, the edges curled with age. She was searching for something, anything, to explain how a house supposedly demolished over a decade ago could still be standing, fully intact until Drew tore it down. But the deeper she dug, the less sense anything made. The deed hadn't changed ownership since 1999. Her father's name, William Carrington, was still listed as the sole property holder. That alone chilled her. He'd died in 2007. She turned to the clerk across the counter. "There must be some mistake. This land was supposed to be sold. My father told me he handled it after the fire." The clerk, a thin, balding man with nicotine-stained fingers, squinted at her. "I'm telling you, ma'am, there's no sale on file. No demolition order either. House was never officially condemned." She leaned forward. "But the fire report didn't require demolition," he interrupted, tapping a stack of yellowed forms. "The damage was classified as minor. Structural repairs recommended, not enforced. If the owner never followed up, well, it'd just sit. And that's what this place did. Sat quiet." "But taxes?" He reached into a drawer and pulled out another folder. "Paid every year, beginning again in 2020 after an 11-year lapse. All cash payments. No name. Just a P.O. box. In state, but out in Flint Hollow." "Flint Hollow?" Olivia frowned. "That's practically deserted." The clerk shrugged. "Still counts." She took the folder and flipped through the receipts. Whoever had paid had done so consistently and carefully. Not once had the taxes gone unpaid. Not once had anyone tried to claim the land under adverse possession laws. Someone had gone out of their way to keep the house legally invisible, but alive. As she stepped outside into the glaring sun, Olivia called Drew. He picked up on the first ring. "Where are you?" he asked, sounding winded. "County clerk's office," she said. "I just confirmed it. The house was never sold, never demolished. My father lied to me." There was silence on the other end. "Drew?" she pressed. I didn't know it was that bad," he finally said. "I assumed it was an oversight. I thought maybe your father sold it off under the table. I didn't realize he never let it go. Or someone made it look like he did, she muttered. The P.O. box paying the taxes is registered in Flint Hollow. Drew exhaled hard. That's where the contractor I used came from. Guy named Randall something. Said he'd done work on that property before. Mentioned seeing the blueprints tucked away in the attic. Olivia froze. Blueprints? Yeah. Told me the house had been rebuilt partially using the old plans. He thought someone was fixing it up again, just didn't make sense to him why no one wanted permits. It clicked like a slow, creeping shiver. Someone had access to her family's original designs. Someone had resurrected the house not to sell it, not to restore it, but to replicate what was there, as if they needed the house exactly how it had once been. A replica, a stage, a tomb. That evening, Olivia returned to her motel room and stared at a black and white copy of the 1995 property deed, her father's signature sprawled across the bottom. Something about it didn't sit right. She ran her finger over the ink, and then she saw it, faint but present, a second impression under the signature line. As if someone had forged over an earlier version, a name that had been erased or replaced. And suddenly, for the first time, Olivia wondered, did my father really own that house when it burned? The ash was still fresh when Olivia stepped over the caution tape and into what remained of the east wing, the section of the house that had always belonged to Rachel. It was barely recognizable now. Charred beams jutted up from the floor like broken ribs. The roof above had collapsed, leaving the sky exposed, pale and pitiless. Olivia picked her way through the rubble, careful to avoid loose nails and splintered wood. Her boots crunched over shattered glass and melted picture frames. She paused at the corner near what had once been Rachel's dresser. And that's when she saw it. Tucked beneath a half-collapsed beam, protected by a warped metal box that had somehow escaped the worst of the blaze, was a scorched, leather-bound book. The edges were curled from heat, the spine singed, but the clasp was still intact. Olivia pulled it free with trembling hands. The initials R.C. were etched into the cover. She didn't wait. She sat cross-legged in the dirt and opened it carefully, page by page, the smell of smoke still clinging to the paper. What she read made her blood run cold. March 14, 2003. I can hear them again. The voices. They walk around above me like ghosts, dragging chairs, opening cabinets. But no one answers when I call. No one hears me scream. March 19, 2003. He said I wasn't ready yet, that I needed to change before I came back upstairs. I don't understand. He brings food, but won't talk. I call him the keeper. I hate him. I think he used to work for Dad. April 2, 2003. There's a girl now. I think she's staying in my old room. I can hear her crying at night. I tried banging on the pipes again. No one came. I don't think she knows I'm down here. May 5, 2003. I think I'm losing time. The light is always on. I dream of fire. I think someone came looking for me. I think they died too. By the time Olivia reached the final entries, her hands were shaking. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. The words had been scrawled across 5 entire pages, the handwriting growing more frenzied with each repetition, until the ink tore the paper. She shut the journal with a snap and stood, heart pounding. Rachel hadn't run away. She'd been locked beneath the house, trapped, tortured, forgotten. And someone, the keeper, had done it with chilling precision. Later, back at the motel, Olivia scanned the pages again under better light. On one page, written faintly in the margin, she found something she hadn't noticed before, a scratch on the floor near the pantry. He never fixed it. It's how I know I'm close. The pantry. The one Olivia had avoided that final night in the house. The one she'd watched Rachel disappear behind just before the fire erupted. Her stomach turned. She remembered the sound, the lock sliding shut, the screams, and how she'd run. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Detective Halliday holding a plastic evidence bag. We found something else in the basement, she said. Inside the bag was a rusted key. One Olivia instantly recognized. The pantry key. Her father used to wear it around his neck. We found it beneath one of the support beams, Halliday said, but it wasn't dropped. It was placed there. Almost like someone wanted it found. Olivia looked down at the bag, Rachel's journal still open on the table behind her, its pages whispering from the past. The house hadn't hidden her sister. It had held her. And someone who had lived among them, had made sure she never got out. The results came back on a rainy Thursday morning. Olivia sat in the sterile, cold lab waiting room, hands clenched tightly around the edge of her chair. Across the table, Drew fidgeted with a plastic cup, eyes fixed on the floor. Neither spoke, the silence stretching taut like a wire between them. The technician appeared, holding 2 folders. She sat down and cleared her throat. "One set of remains is your sister, Rachel Carrington," she said quietly. "The other is a young man, approximately mid-20s, closely related to your father's side of the family." Olivia's breath hitched. "What do you mean, related?" "Genetically, he shares about 50% of the same markers as your father's DNA," the technician explained, "but not closely related to you or Rachel. His mother's side doesn't match anyone in your known family tree." Drew looked up sharply. "Is this a half-brother?" The technician nodded. "Most likely. He's been here for years, but there were no records of him in any of your family documents. No birth certificates, no medical records." Olivia's mind reeled. Her father had never mentioned a second family. Her mother had died overseas years ago, and the only family she knew were the few scattered relatives in Millersfield, none of whom ever spoke of another child. "Has anyone been reported missing?" Olivia asked, voice trembling. "None that matched this profile," the technician said. "And the bones indicate he died around the same time as Rachel. Possibly in the same event." Drew ran his hands through his hair. "So, Dad had a secret son. And he died with Rachel." "But why hide it?" Olivia whispered. "Why not tell anyone?" Outside the lab window, rain drummed steadily against the glass. Olivia thought about the whispers she'd heard around town, the rumors about her father's past, the hushed conversations, the sideways glances. The second family had always been a ghost story, a scandal that no one wanted to touch. Now it was terrifyingly real. Later that day, Olivia visited the town historian, a grizzled man named Harold Green, whose memory was said to hold every secret Millersfield had ever tried to bury. Harold squinted through thick glasses as she laid out her questions. "There was a woman, Clara Whitmore," he began slowly. "She was young and poor, worked as a maid for the Carringtons. They say William Carrington got her pregnant. It was hushed up, of course. He paid her off, sent her away with some money. No one knew if the child lived." Olivia's stomach churned. Could this be the mother of the young man? "And the house?" she pressed. "Was there any sign he ever came back?" Harold shook his head. "No one saw or heard from him, but there were strange noises from the estate in the nights after the fire. People swore they saw shadows moving inside." Olivia's heart pounded. The house wasn't just hiding Rachel, it was hiding her half-brother's ghost. That evening, Drew and Olivia sat in the motel room, the rain tapping a relentless rhythm against the window. "I never wanted you to get tangled in this," Drew said softly, "but I'm afraid someone wanted to keep it all buried. Not just the fire, but everything after." Olivia looked away, fighting tears. "Who and why?" Drew's jaw clenched. "That's what we have to find out." The shadows outside deepened as the night grew colder. And Olivia knew, without a doubt, that the secrets in her family were far darker and far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. Olivia sat across from Drew in the cramped motel room, the weight of everything crashing down on her like a storm surge. The dim light flickered overhead, casting shadows that seemed to dance on the peeling wallpaper. For the first time in weeks, she saw the man she married falter, his carefully built walls crumbling beneath the truth. "I need to know," she said, voice brittle but steady. Why didn't you tell me about the photos, the ones of Rachel alive? Drew swallowed hard, his fingers nervously twisting the frayed edge of a blanket. I didn't want to drag you into it. Drag me in? Olivia's eyes flashed. You demolished the house. You never told me you were being blackmailed. His jaw tightened. It wasn't blackmail at first. It was just pressure. I got a call. A man, no name, just threats. He had pictures, Olivia. Pictures of Rachel, not just as a child, but... He hesitated, voice cracking slightly. As a teenager, alive long after everyone thought she was gone. Olivia's heart stopped. Why didn't you show me? Why didn't you tell me? Her voice cracked, tears welling. We could have stopped this. Drew looked away, because the man said if I said anything, if I tried to involve the police, he'd leak everything. Pictures, stories about you, about your family. He said I'd lose you. She stared at him, disbelief mixing with betrayal. You let fear decide for you. You let him manipulate our entire lives. I thought I was protecting you, Drew whispered. I thought if I kept this quiet, I could fix it alone. Olivia clenched her fists. You tore down the house where our family's darkest secrets lived. But you never wanted me to know the full truth. The following day, Olivia confronted the contractor Drew had hired. Randall, a burly man with salt and pepper hair and a face weathered by years of outdoor labor. Randall's workshop was cluttered with blueprints, tools, and dusty boxes. Olivia's eyes scanned the faded architectural drawings pinned on the wall. You said you saw the plans in the attic? She asked. Randall nodded slowly. Yeah. When I first started work, there were stacks of old papers, photos, even some letters. I thought it was just family memorabilia. But some of it looked more secret. What kind of secret? Hard to say. But one thing was clear. The house had been rebuilt using those plans. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Not a restoration, more like a reconstruction. Olivia's mind raced. Did you ever meet anyone who lived there? Randall hesitated. Just once. A man came by at night. Tall, wore a hat pulled low. He was quiet, didn't say much. Paid in cash, no questions asked. Asked me to do work quickly and quietly. Olivia felt a cold finger press on her spine. Did he say who he was? No, just warned me to keep my mouth shut. That evening, Olivia confronted Drew again, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and exhaustion. You lied, she said bluntly. You lied to protect yourself, and in doing so, you nearly destroyed what was left of us. Drew's shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, but sorry isn't enough, Olivia replied. You've made this personal. Now I need to know who this man is. Who's been pulling your strings? Drew looked up, haunted. I don't know, but whoever it is, they're tied to your family's past, and they're not done yet. Outside, the night closed in like a shroud, and Olivia realized the man she thought she knew was caught in a web far darker than she could have imagined. The town of Millersfield had a way of keeping its secrets under tight lock and key. But sometimes, even the quietest voices found a way to whisper. Olivia sat across from Mrs. Agnes Whitmore, the elderly neighbor who had lived beside the Carrington estate for nearly 50 years. Agnes had always been a woman of few words, her pale blue eyes clouded with age, her hands trembling slightly as she sipped tea. For years, Olivia had heard rumors that Agnes knew more about the house, more than she'd ever been willing to say. Why now? Olivia asked softly. Agnes took a deep breath, her gaze drifting toward the window. You remind me of your mother, she murmured, and I've carried this for too long. With shaky hands, Agnes reached into her purse and pulled out a faded photograph. The edges were worn, the image barely visible through years of wear. Olivia took the photo gently. It showed her father, William Carrington, standing beside a tall, broad-shouldered man with a shadowed face, wearing a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat. They stood in front of the old house, expressions somber. Who is this? Olivia asked. Agnes's lips trembled. That man was called the Keeper. Your father hired him after the fire. Said he needed someone to watch over the house. Keep the past locked away. Olivia's heart pounded. Did he know what was in the basement? Agnes nodded slowly. Oh yes, the Keeper knew everything. He was more than a caretaker. He was a guardian. A jailer. Olivia's mind flashed back to Rachel's journal. The Keeper bringing food but never speaking. Locking her away. Is he still alive? Olivia asked, voice barely above a whisper. Agnes nodded again. Last I heard, he lives out near the old woods, in a cabin nobody visits, keeps to himself. But he's still there, watching, waiting. Determined to uncover the truth, Olivia set out for the cabin the next morning, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and resolve. The journey took her deep into the dense woods behind the estate, the path winding and overgrown. Branches scratched at her arms, and the silence was thick, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath her boots. At last, she spotted it, a small, weather-beaten cabin half hidden by moss and vines. The windows were darkened, the doors slightly ajar. Olivia stepped inside. The cabin smelled of dust and decay. Old newspapers lay scattered on a rickety table, and faded photographs were pinned to the walls, pictures of the house, the family, and strange symbols she didn't recognize. She moved cautiously, noticing a set of keys hanging on a rusty nail and a small box locked with a heavy padlock. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from behind. Olivia spun around. A tall man stepped into the dim light, his face lined and worn but unmistakably the figure from the photo, the Keeper. His eyes were sharp, calculating, but tinged with exhaustion. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. Olivia swallowed her fear. Why did you keep Rachel locked away? What happened to her? The Keeper's gaze flickered, a flicker of pain crossing his face. It was never meant to be like this, he murmured. Your father wanted to protect the family legacy. Some truths are too dangerous. Rachel. She was caught in something far beyond her understanding. Olivia clenched her fists. And the second body? The half-brother? He looked away. That's a story for another time. Before she could press further, the Keeper reached into his coat and pulled out a worn notebook. This holds everything, he said. The past, the secrets, the people involved. Olivia took the notebook with trembling hands. As she opened it, the woods outside seemed to close in. The truth was coming. And with it, danger. The Keeper's notebook was chaos. Names, dates, diagrams of the Carrington estate, scribbled warnings, a maze of notes spanning over 2 decades. But beneath the confusion, patterns began to emerge, ones Olivia had never imagined. Back in her motel room, Olivia laid the pages out on the bed. Drew watched from the corner of the room, silent, guilt still heavy on his face from the last few days. Olivia had barely spoken to him since her visit to the cabin. She wasn't ready to forgive. She wasn't sure she ever would be. The notebook revealed a chilling timeline. Her father had hired the Keeper shortly after the 2003 fire, but not to protect the house. No. William Carrington's instructions had been more sinister. Preserve the house as it was. Not rebuild. Not remodel. Recreate. The layout, the hidden doors, even the wallpaper in the upstairs hall. Everything was to remain identical, like a crime scene frozen in time. And then Olivia found a diagram that made her stomach drop. A second hidden room, not in the basement, but behind the walls of her mother's old bedroom. A room no one had ever mentioned. That night, Olivia returned to the ruins alone, flashlight in hand. The police tape had slackened, and no one guarded the site anymore. The wind howled through the broken remains as she stepped carefully over the rubble, guided only by memory and instinct. She found the wall, what used to be the eastern side of her mother's bedroom. The plaster had crumbled away, revealing skeletal wooden beams. Behind them, sealed in with rotting boards, was a narrow, windowless space. It took all her strength to pry the boards loose. Inside, the air was stale, thick with decay. Olivia stepped in, heart pounding. The room was small, barely the size of a walk-in closet. But it was full. A rocking chair, a pair of scorched women's slippers, a hairbrush still clinging to strands of dark blonde hair, a teacup carefully placed on a low wooden stool. And on the far wall, a series of photos. Handwritten notes, old letters, her mother's handwriting. Olivia staggered back. "No," she whispered. The second skeleton, it hadn't been her half-brother. It had been her mother. The woman who was supposed to have died overseas after a nervous breakdown. That was the story her father told, the version of events Olivia had repeated to strangers, teachers, friends. But her mother never left the country. She died in this house, behind this wall. And no one had ever looked for her. Later, in the motel, Olivia spread the evidence out before Drew. The truth was unraveling faster than either of them could process. "My mother didn't leave us," she said, voice hollow. "She was hidden." Drew's hands trembled as he picked up one of the notes. "Why would your father do this? Why trap her? Why Rachel?" "I don't know," Olivia said, "but it's all tied together. Rachel, my mother, the half-brother, and whoever was paying the taxes. Someone made sure this house stayed untouched, undisturbed, as if it were a shrine, or a prison." She thought back to the photo Agnes had shown her. The keeper had been just a tool, an accomplice, not the mastermind. The true orchestrator had been lurking in plain sight all along. Someone with access to deeds, to legal files, someone who had everything to gain from the Carrington name falling apart. And for the first time, Olivia's thoughts turned to someone she had trusted without question. Her aunt, Margaret. Olivia hadn't spoken to her Aunt Margaret in almost a year. Their last conversation had been polite but distant, a holiday call filled with empty pleasantries and shallow remarks about how busy life gets. Margaret had always been the elegant one, the family's pillar after Olivia's mother's supposed death. She handled the estate after William's passing, filed legal documents, offered comfort through well-practiced words and stiff hugs. And now Olivia knew, every bit of it had been a lie. She arrived unannounced at Margaret's sprawling Victorian on the edge of town. Rain soaked the front porch as Olivia stood trembling under the overhang. She pressed the doorbell. Margaret answered moments later, her silver hair pinned neatly back, her face lined but composed. Her eyes flicked down to the mud on Olivia's boots. "Olivia," she said coolly, "you look unwell." "I know everything," Olivia replied. Margaret blinked, a mask of concern sliding over her face. "Everything?" Olivia pushed past her and into the foyer. "Rachel, Mom, the basement, the fake deed, the shell company paying the taxes. You orchestrated all of it." For a moment, Margaret didn't move. Then she closed the door quietly. "Well," she said, voice soft, "I always knew you were the sharp one." They sat across from each other in the dimly lit sitting room, stormlight flashing through the windows. Olivia clutched Rachel's journal in one hand and the deed copy in the other. "Why?" she asked. "Why go through so much just to destroy what was left of this family?" Margaret smiled bitterly. "Because it was never your family. It was mine. I was the one who grew up cleaning your grandfather's boots, feeding your spoiled father's lies. When he inherited the estate, I was cast aside, married off and forgotten. And then he had you, his perfect legacy." She paused, pouring herself a glass of brandy with shaking hands. "But I knew William was never the upstanding man he pretended to be. He used people, hurt them, including your mother." Olivia's breath caught. What did he do to her? Margaret's smile turned to a snarl. He locked her away when she tried to expose him, said she was sick, that she was becoming a liability, so he kept her quiet. And I helped him. At first, she stared into her glass. But then I saw what he did to Rachel, how he made her disappear when she started asking questions about his affairs, about the boy from Flint Hollow. "You mean my half-brother?" Olivia whispered. Margaret nodded. "I tried to intervene, but it was too late. They were both gone, so I did what I could to fix it, to take back control." "You built the house again," Olivia said. You recreated it. You paid the taxes. You made it disappear from the system. And I kept it just the way it was, Margaret said, waiting for someone to look, someone to ask. I couldn't leave the bodies there, not forever. But I also couldn't destroy the only evidence of what really happened. So I waited for you to come home. Olivia stared at her, disgusted. And Drew? Margaret chuckled softly. Men are so easy to manipulate. He needed money. I offered help. Then I threatened to take it away. He did exactly what I wanted, lit the match. You wanted the fire. Margaret's smile disappeared. I wanted closure, and if that meant burning down the last remaining piece of Carrington rot, so be it. You were never supposed to walk into those ruins, Olivia. You were supposed to see a smoldering shell and turn away like everyone else. Olivia rose slowly. But I didn't. No, Margaret said, her voice hollow. You didn't. And now it's all yours. 3 days later, Margaret was arrested on charges of conspiracy, evidence tampering, and fraud. The bodies of Rachel, Olivia's mother, and the unknown half-brother were all officially identified. The Carrington estate was declared a historic crime scene, and Olivia? She stood in the ashes of the house that wasn't supposed to exist, finally free of its secrets. But in the silence, she couldn't help but wonder. What if there was someone else still watching?